Welcome into episode 2 of the RF Properties Podcast. I'm your host, Bruce Falk.
And I'm your co-host, Justin Roberts.
Today, we're going to talk about a lot of the changes that are coming up in the real estate industry, how it affects buyers and sellers, kind of our thoughts on the whole thing, how it affects agents working with buyers and sellers. So we're just going to share our thoughts on it. We're going to kind of show you where everything's at, how we see it affecting the industry going forward in the future.
Yep. So a little overview for any buyers and sellers out there that haven't heard about this change. I think at this point most agents have, but really this all has to do with commission. And typically in the past, the way real estate has been handled in our area specifically, I don't know about other areas, but if you go to list a property for, let's say, 6%, it's pretty standard that half of that goes to paying the buyer's agent. So the seller is paying a percentage of that, and it's covering the buyer's agent. Well, what's changing now, and that's always been negotiable on how it was handled, but the biggest change now is per NAR and the mandate that's coming out August 16th, August 17th, you as a buyer now, before you're allowed to tour a home with an agent, you have to have a buyer's agency agreement signed. And in that buyer's agency agreement, it has to have the duration of the agreement, and it has to have the compensation. And that compensation can be a flat fee or a percentage. So now the buyers are on the hook for paying that. Now, we've still been seeing a lot of agents or a lot of companies that have already made these implementations in their business. These sellers are still offering a buyer's commission. So if you're a buyer and you sign that agreement, let's say with me and to represent you, it's 3%. Now, not every seller is going to offer that, and if the seller doesn't offer that, then you're responsible for paying that 3%. But if the seller is offering 2 to 3%, then I get whatever they're offering.
Yeah, so in other words, if the seller is willing to pay a 2% buyer's agency commission and you have 3% on your buyer's agency agreement, then the buyer is responsible for that additional 1%.
That's right. Unless the agent decides that it's okay.
Unless the agent decides to come down to the 2%.
Now, if you're an agent listening, just so you know, that if you sign a buyer's agency agreement for, let's say, 2% and the seller's offering 3%, you're not allowed to accept that 3%. You're not allowed to accept more than what is in the buyer's agency agreement.
Yeah, we learned that, last week?
Yep, last week. Yeah.
We were very confused on how that would work. We thought that if the seller was offering 3%, we had a buyer's agency agreement for 2%, then we could go ahead and get paid the 3%. But we learned last week that's not the case.
Yeah.
It's the lower of the two.
And straight off of NAR's website, the buyer broker may not receive compensation for brokerage services from any source that exceeds the amount or rate agreed to in the agreement with the buyer.
Yeah.
So that's straight off of NAR's website regarding this lawsuit. And that's a lot of the misinformation that I've heard out there is a lot of agents are saying, when you're going out signing these buyer's agency agreements, we're going to put $2,500 flat fee on here, and then we're just going to negotiate with a seller for our commission.
Nope.
You cannot do that. You can negotiate for that $2,500, but you can't negotiate for the rest. And also, buyers beware, if you have an agent that is telling you that is not the case. And unfortunately, a lot of this misinformation is going around with agents. There's a lot of changes going on. Not everybody knows how this is going to shake out. So there's going to be misinformation and confusion. But if you're a buyer out there, just know that the commission on these buyer agency agreements is negotiable. And if an agent is telling you that, we're just going to sign for this amount and I'm going to go try and negotiate with the seller, that needs to be a red flag to you, because you could actually be on the hook for that other amount.
And a lot of this has to do with residential real estate. We don't necessarily know if it's going to be in effect for land and commercial yet. That's kind of still up in the air. A lot of this stuff is still up in the air. I don't think the judge has signed off on the settlement yet, right?
No, nothing's finalized.
Yeah, so nothing's finalized. Some of this could change. But as of the day we're recording this podcast, this is the way it is.
Yeah.
And so first-time home buyers are really going to be crunched, I feel like. But it could also be a good thing because, there's a lot more transparency.
No doubt.
I think it's going to weed out some of the more shady, the worst agents out there that don't fully communicate to their buyers or sellers how they get paid, and then it's going to open up the door for positive things in the future. And, if buyers get sick of this enough where sellers aren't offering a buyer's agency commission, I mean, there could be other lawsuits coming down the road, I could see.
Absolutely. There's already been some that have been started by buyers or saying, hey, this isn't fair. And, there is some good, like Bruce was talking about, the transparency. But also, if you're a buyer, now you have an agent that is in your corner. So just like we were talking about the commissions negotiable, don't just sign an agreement with the first agent you talk to. It's just like if you were to list a home. Have a few buyers consultations with different agents to see who you believe is going to work the best for you and what services they offer to you as a buyer. And it could vary drastically, but just like you said, I think the days of the part-time agent, that sells a few houses a year, or even the untrustworthy agents, this is going to weed a lot of that out, and it's going to be better for the industry. It's going to be better for buyers and better for sellers. But now you have somebody dedicated in your corner that is signed. Not only have you signed this agreement that you're working solely with this agent, but this agent has signed an agreement saying they are solely working for you in your best interest. So they're going to be out there trying to find you the best deal, doing X, Y, and Z that they offer to be sure that you're taken care of to the fullest amount.
Yeah. In that regard, it can be really good. I mean, that agent's going to go to work for you because they're contractually obligated to do so. So, Justin, you mentioned something that caught my ear, buyer consultation. What is that?
Yep. So just like if you were to sell a property, hopefully you're calling a couple agents to come to your property and sit down with you and tell you that the services they would offer to sell your home, what they would do for you, their track record as an agent. And that's going to be a lot of the same thing. It could be for a buyer. It could be in person. You go get a cup of coffee together, meet each other. Or it could be over Zoom. It could be even over a phone call. But you're going to sit down with this agent, and they're going to hopefully have a buyer's presentation, tell you all the services that they offer to a buyer, and how they're going to handle you throughout the transaction, show you what their track record is for helping buyers. And a buyer's consultation is really just an opportunity for you to sit down and get to know an agent and truly get a judgment on if this agent is going to fit your needs and have your best interest at heart.
Yeah. They're going to recommend, certain things that you go ahead and take care of beforehand, like getting a pre-approval on financing if you choose to go that route.
Mm-hmm.
And they're going to have a network of lenders and partners like insurance and stuff like that to put you in contact with that have a good track record or local, well-known people that take care of their clients.
All right. We've talked a little bit about the buyer side. We'll come back to that. Let's talk about the seller side. What does this mean for sellers now?
Yeah. For sellers, typically when we list a property, we agree to a certain percentage with the seller to list the property, market the property, handle the transaction on their side, and that's what they pay. In that agreement, we have a spot where if another agent brings a buyer, we specify what we're willing to split with that agent to bring a qualified buyer.
Mm-hmm.
If the transaction gets closed. So now we're going to have a conversation with the seller to say, look, we're agreeing on 6%. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
What percentage do you want to pay a potential buyer's agent?
Right.
They're going to have to talk to you about that, negotiate that with you.
Yep.
They could say nothing.
Yeah, absolutely. They could. And, in some instances, that may not be a bad scenario, especially if you didn't offer that compensation and then you're like, just show me your buyer's agency agreement and we'll negotiate off of that. But regardless, based on the rules, let's say you did offer that 3% buyer's agency commission. If that person has $2,500 in their buyer's agency agreement, they're still only getting paid $2,500.
Yeah.
It's hard for me in all this because I don't know how things have been handled in other states or how other companies have handled it. But since I've been in real estate, I've always let the seller know that it's optional whether or not you want to offer buyer's agency commission, just like you talked about. It is in our listing agreement, and we have it drawn out. We also have another addendum that draws it all out again on how it's handled with the different agency clauses and all that. So a lot of it, on the seller side, for me personally, is the same on how I will handle stuff. You know, in the next couple years, you're probably going to have to educate your clients on this lawsuit and what exactly it means. And the ones that pick up on it are going to start saying that they don't want to offer buyer's agency compensation, which is completely fine. But you as an agent may want to figure out some kind of game plan to explain why it is important to offer buyer's agency compensation.
Yes, it is important because if you don't, you're limiting your pool of buyers.
Yeah.
You're limiting it to those that are unrepresented,
Yeah.
which there aren't a lot of those out there. There are some.
Well, I also want to share something about that being an unrepresented buyer and going back to talking to the buyer specifically. 70% of all real estate lawsuits deal with unrepresented buyers.
Because they don't have a professional to guide them
Right.
and tell them best practice.
That's right.
So they're opening themselves up to liability just by not knowing the laws and not knowing how things work.
I mean, you got somebody that's just trying to save some money and figure out their way through this.
No.
And you know, that's not always, saving money is not always the best way, because in the long run you may not actually be saving money.
How many times have you done something where it was more work on you and you saved money, but at the end you were like, I'd have paid double that to not have to do all that?
Oh, way too much.
Yeah, I do it all the time.
Way too much.
Really, because I mean, I like saving money as much as the next guy, but as I mature and as I go through, you know, being a business owner and everything, there's some things that just aren't worth the time and effort it takes to get it done. It'd be better just to pay somebody to help you.
Yeah. Well, that's like Hannah and I are buying this cabin, and it's funny you bring this up because we were having this conversation earlier. The first thing that we have to do to this cabin is we have to get the electricity, the rough-in electrical done on it.
Mm-hmm.
And for the past couple months, Hannah and I have been like, yeah, we'll just do it ourselves. I'll knock it out because I've got the experience. I know how to do it. But now I'm sitting back. We had this conversation today at lunch that we're just going to pay somebody because the amount of time and work that it would take me to do that is not worth my time.
Yeah.
Whenever I could pay somebody to take care of it for me, that stress isn't on my mind. Having to go out there and do it's not on my mind.
Yeah. And the professional is licensed. They're insured. You know, if something happens, you're going to be a lot better off on the back end than you would have if you did it yourself and burn the house down.
Yeah,
You know?
no doubt. And that goes back to the negotiating of the buyer's agency agreement. You know, if you're a buyer and you're tight on funds and you don't have a lot of money to spend to go towards a commission, you know, and you're thinking about going unrepresented, that's why it's important to talk to a few agents, because more than likely, if you explain your situation to someone and you're truly genuine about it, then one of these agents is going to work something out with you. And now you have somebody in your corner,
Yeah.
you know, that you didn't think that you would be able to have before.
There's so much that people don't realize that goes into the buying process. And there's so many hoops you have to jump through. There's so many hurdles you have to get over. Sometimes they're easy. Sometimes they're so tough.
Yeah.
And if you don't know how to handle adverse situations in regards to real estate, then you're going to end up spending a lot more time, a lot more money trying to figure it out than you would have just hiring an agent.
Yeah, for sure. And I saw a clip on social media of a real estate attorney on another podcast talking about this, but she said almost every for sale by owner and unrepresented buyer that sits across from her on the table tells her that if they would have known that they were getting another full-time job, they would not have done this themselves.
Yeah, it can be. I mean, it's our full-time jobs working with buyers and sellers.
Yeah, absolutely.
So, I mean, we're up till 10, 11 o'clock at night sometimes, you know, typing up papers and negotiating, talking back and forth with buyers and sellers with other professionals to get something done. So it's just, there's a lot that goes into it that isn't seen by the outside. And I was in that boat at one point. At one point, I didn't think real estate agents were that valuable. But now that I'm in it,
Yeah,
buddy, my opinion has changed
yeah, for sure.
big time.
For sure. And it's, you know, we are specifically working for you in your transaction and your process, but we're not only working for you. We have multiple buyers that we're working with, multiple sellers, trying to juggle that all at the same time. And I think that going back to the transparency thing, this is something agents have done a terrible job at in the past, is describing where they actually provide value and what they're doing. Because a lot of people, you see it on social media, all a real estate agent's good for is opening a door. And you and I know that's not the case because we're in the industry. And, but a lot of people, they don't know because their agent is taking care of all this stuff and not keeping them in the loop and not educating them beforehand. Like, hey, this is all I'm going to be doing for you. But now that's where this is really important. You got to have your value proposition for these people and show them like X, Y, and Z what you're doing.
Yeah. And homes are different than land. Land is different than commercial. Commercial is different than homes. I mean, with us, we specialize in rural real estate, land, and rural homes.
Yeah,
And that's different than something in a city.
no doubt.
So you got to have somebody that's in your corner that knows about that specific thing that you're wanting to do, whether it's buying land, buying a home, buying commercial real estate, somebody that's got experience in that and knows how to handle the common things that are going to come up
Yeah,
in those transactions.
for sure. And speaking about agents, where do agents fall in all this? What do you see? How does this change things for agents? How can an agent moving forward grow their business?
Preparation. You're going to have to be prepared as an agent to have those conversations, to navigate through them. You're going to have your ducks in a row. You're going to have your forms ready to go.
Yeah,
I just think that the agents that don't prepare, don't really have their clients' best interests at heart, are not going to thrive in this.
100%.
Yeah.
I completely agree. And there is more opportunity than ever if you're an agent. If you do the right stuff and consistently work hard on that, I'll say that again, consistently work hard on this to figure out these changes, educate yourself, create systems in preparation for all these different scenarios that are going to come up. In a couple of years, you're going to be a top producer for sure. Because like Bruce mentioned earlier, this is going to get a lot of these part-time agents and not so good agents out of here. Closings happen every single day. There's a ton of business. No matter how many agents are in the business, there's closings happening every day, and there's plenty to go around. But now there's going to be even more opportunity. And it's really, if you sit and dwell on all these problems, then you're going to be stuck there. And that's what's going to kill your business. But if you sit down and think about, okay, what's the solution to this? How can I be a better agent for my clients? What systems can I put in place? How can I prepare? How can I train for this? Whether it's practicing scripts to talk to this, or even writing down all the different objections that people are having and script it out, practice it. So, you're not a robot when you read a script. It's preparing you to be more educated on what somebody's talking about. Yeah. Presentations, just how your transaction management, everything. If you just sit down and analyze your business and look at it like it is a business, how I can grow it, how can I be more organized, and mainly look at it and what can I do to better serve people and not yourself, then your business is going to flourish.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
I just went on a little rant there.
No, that was good, man. And, facing objections, it's not a sales thing. It's an adding value thing.
Absolutely.
Like, if you question me on something that I tell you and I shut down and don't know how to respond, that's not helping you at all. I may be educated on it. I may know exactly how to answer the question, but if I'm not prepared, then I'm just going to freeze and shut down. And
right.
But if I'm prepared, then I can add that value because I can tell you how to move forward or answer your question without having to stop and look it up, and then you don't feel like you've been served.
Yeah. And I'm a big presentations guy, a big systems and technologies kind of thing. So buyer presentations have been something I've been stressing to everybody. We were talking about it yesterday specifically, trying to figure out a standard copy for the office. Where do you think that falls into all this, and why is it important for an agent to have a buyer's agency agreement? And why is it important to a buyer that an agent has a buyer's agency agreement? And I think it's a lot of what we just talked about.
Yeah, just communicating your value.
Yeah.
Just laying it all out there, saying, this is what I bring to the table. Full transparency, here's where we're at.
Yeah.
Here's what I do for that in exchange for your commission or the seller's commission or however it works out.
Yeah.
And here's what you're going to get.
Yep, no doubt.
Here's the road that you need to be on to be successful in this.
Listing presentations are a normal thing, but very few agents have a listing presentation. I have been in this business for going on 6 years now, and in that amount of time, I've only met one other agent that I know of that has a listing presentation. And I will tell you that every listing appointment I have ever gone up against another agent, my listing presentation won that before I even showed up. Because I email that presentation to the seller before our appointment, and then I bring a copy to talk to him there.
Yeah.
But that just shows how much it adds value and how big of a difference that can make. And on the buyer side, that presentation, like Bruce just talked about, is going to talk about all the different services his buyer's agent offers, but it's also going to have a timeline of the transaction. It's going to have a list, or it should have a list of all your local lenders, resources in the community, and all this. And talking about it from a marketing standpoint, this is an incredible resource to a buyer that throughout the whole transaction, they're going to look back at.
Your reference.
Exactly.
Mm-hmm.
And you can think of this as a touch point. So in marketing, you talk about you want to touch a client so many times. Let's just say it's 7 different ways. So now that buyer's presentation is one touch. You got social media, that's another, talking to them, showing them. Those are all different touches when it comes to the buyer side of that. But it's just a way for you to add value, but also serve your client.
Yeah. Communicate.
Yeah. And that's
with
I didn't mean to
No, I was
cut you off there, but communication is the number one issue in real estate. Bruce and I had an issue with communication earlier in this week, and we got through that situation. But this buyer's agency agreement, as an agent, you need to be as thorough as you can when you're communicating. Lay everything out more than you think you should have to. You work in this industry every day. These buyers and sellers do not work in this industry, so they don't understand everything that you think is normal. So this buyer's agency agreement, God, I keep saying buyer's agency agreement. It's on my mind. This buyer's presentation and listing presentations are another form of communication that you can have with your client that spells everything out, and it's something that they can look back at. Or like if you mention something and you didn't mention it in too much of detail, and they get there sitting like, what was he thinking about? They can flip it open and look at it, pull it up on their phone, and find exactly what you were talking about. Oh, okay. I see. Now this makes sense. Okay, now I know what's coming next.
Yeah.
Now I know how this is all going to lay out. Now I know what my agent's actually doing for me behind the scenes. And I'm even bad about that on the communication aspect. Is a lot of times when things are going on, I'm not telling my buyers and sellers because I don't want to get them all worked up and, stressed out over small stuff that I'm trying to fix behind the scenes. That's right. And trying to get in their favor and get all worked out before I actually bring it up to them. And that's why it's important to have that line of communication so they know kind of behind the scenes what you're actually doing for them.
Yeah. And that's what we try to aim for with our clients is put the stress on us. We want to shoulder that stress until we get you to the closing table.
That's right.
We don't want you to worry about anything. If you have any questions, ask. But we want you to be able to say, I don't have to ask Bruce or Justin this because I see it right here.
That's right.
I already know this is going to happen.
100%.
I know what to expect. 100%. We like setting expectations, communicating, and adding value.
Yeah. And something I have always believed in is relationships over transactions. And part of having good relationships with your clients goes back to the preparation, the systems that you have in place. I mean, we sound like a broken record, and, listening to this, you may think it's easy, but are you actually implementing this in your business? Because most of the agents I look at aren't, and that's the sad thing. And that's where, going back to when I said, if you consistently work hard on something, that goes hand in hand with this. Like, you have to consistently do this over and over and over and over again. You have to, everything you do in your business is about consistency. That doesn't mean you go and hand out buyer's presentations for a month, and then you're like, it ain't working for me. I'm gonna do something else. Like,
Yeah.
that's not how this works. Just like with social media. Oh, I'm gonna try and post these reels for a month. Oh, it didn't do too good. I'm done. Like, if you want your business to grow, you have to put the time in. And that's where I see there's so many good agents out there, and so many, not even just real estate agents, but in the industry, people that could be so good at stuff, but they just give up too soon.
All right. So we talk a lot about land on here, but what about the residential market? How's that looking right now?
Yep. So we're starting to see more inventory. It's starting to climb back up. Um, right now, there's not a whole lot of buyers that I'm seeing in the market, especially in that higher price range. Everybody's just kind of, elections coming up. I'm getting that comment a lot. Everybody's trying to wait, and at the hope of some rate drops getting close. So people are kind of holding off on doing that. The market's still competitive. We've seen and heard about some multiple offer situations on some stuff. Um, it's really case by case. Markets are localized, so what's happening here could be completely different than somewhere else. But inventory is starting to pick up. We got a few residential listing appointments coming up, one right after this, and fairly confident. I think the issue is there's not a lot of good properties on the market. Like
Yeah.
these people that got in the COVID time frame at these super low interest rates are kind of holding because they've got these nice houses. They have this pent up demand. They want to move and do something else, but they don't want to give up that 2.25% 3% interest rate. And I don't think it's necessarily. I don't know if it'll ever get back down to that, but I don't think it necessarily has to go back down to that for them to do something.
Yeah.
I think if we just see a percentage drop, then a lot of those people are going to start unloading those assets and moving on to something else.
Yeah. Yeah. And from what we're hearing, there's a lot better chance now of there being a rate cut before the end of 2024.
Yep. September is what we're hearing.
Yeah, that's what we're hearing. I don't know if I'd call for it that quick. I would predict there's going to be one before the end of the year.
Yeah.
But the last time I talked to a financial expert, they said they expect 3 over the next year. So from July this year to July of next year, they're expecting 3. Now, when we say percentage cuts, that could be 0.25% at the time. It's probably going to be a little to start out with.
Yeah.
I think the Fed's going to cut rates a little bit, 0.25%, see what happens, because they don't want to ignite inflation back up to the levels we've been seeing. They want to keep it down. So I think they're going to just kind of stick their toe in the water a little bit, check the temperature, see how things are going, and then they're going to go from there and decide how to do it. So
Right. Pretty quick episode today, just talking about it a little bit. We're going to talk a little more in depth as we get more information on this. And if you're any party watching this, whether you're an agent, a buyer, seller, if you have any questions specifically, let us know in the comments down below. If you're watching on YouTube, or shoot us an email, or any platform you're on, reach out to us, let us know, and we'll address it in another podcast. But to sum everything up that we've already talked about, there's going to be more transparency in the industry than ever.
Yep.
There's going to be better representation than ever. Yes, buyers may have to pay out of pocket, but how many industries do you know out there that before somebody does work for you, they're just doing it for free? Like, you call somebody in to paint your house, you got to sign that beforehand. You get somebody to cut your grass, you're signing a contract. I mean, it's a lot of the same thing. Like, the way this is going is now you have a dedicated agent working for you. So you're saying that you will compensate them if the seller is not offering that compensation. And if you're an agent, like we talked about, there's more opportunity than ever. It's how you handle your business. If you capitalize on this right now, you can take your business to whatever heights you want to. It is the ball is in your court. It is completely however you want to handle it. But anything you want to add to that to close it out?
yeah, I just think educate yourselves if you're buyers, and if you're sellers that are thinking about listing your property. We are a resource for you. We want to be a resource for you. Reach out to us. We'd love to sit down with you, have a buyer's consultation if you're in the market over the next year or so, maybe even 2 years. Just be prepared. Be prepared. If you've got some money, save it. Don't spend it. If you're looking to get into the real estate market, save your money. Be prepared.
Absolutely.
That's my big thing.
Absolutely.
Be prepared.
And I'm going to keep it going a little bit longer, but that's also why those buyer's consultations are important, because we can sit down and to a degree, we can talk about your finances. You know, we can't get too deep into it because we're not a lender, but we can direct you to somebody, but we can, you know, kind of give you some guidelines, some tips, you know, how to prepare. And, you know, you don't have to be ready to buy in this market to have a buyer's consultation. Like if you think that you're going to buy in 6 months, absolutely call me. I'd rather you call me 6 months in ahead and then let me know, like, hey, this is the time frame. I want to be prepared when that time comes.
Gives you time to find the property you're looking for too.
Absolutely.
Yeah. A lot of people, they're wanting to buy right now. And right now there's just not a lot to sell them.
Yeah.
I mean, there's some stuff out there, but it's not, if you're looking for your forever home, your forever land, whatever it may be, your time is your friend.
Mm-hmm.
The longer you have to look, the better chance that you're going to find exactly what you're looking for.
Right.
So be prepared. Do your due diligence ahead of time. Start looking now, and then when the opportunity presents itself, you'll be ready to pounce on it.
That's right. I want to close it out by saying agents aren't out there to get you. You know, a good agent truly cares about you and wants what's best for you. I know that's the case for me and Bruce and all the agents we have here at RF Properties. We have your best interest at hand. So we're ready to go to work for you. If you need help with anything, you have any kind of questions, real estate, you need contacts for certain stuff, services that you need regarding your real estate transaction, anything, reach out to us. If you're an agent, you know, come talk to us. We'd be happy to help you in any way we can. We're all navigating this together. This is the time for everybody to come together and try and figure this out.
Yeah.
As a team, you know, if you help each other, everybody obviously succeeds and does better. But yeah.
The real estate industry is going to continue to change. I feel like over the next couple of years, it's going to be a pretty interesting next couple of years. So hang on tight. Let's see what happens.
Absolutely. Well, we appreciate y'all watching episode 2 of the RF Properties podcast. I'm your co-host, Justin Roberts.
And I'm your host, Bruce Falk. We appreciate you stopping by, hanging out with us for a few minutes. We'll catch you on the next episode.
See you.
Bye-bye.